Let's do it. Yep. Our first topic of the day brought to us by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are wrapping up, but you can still get it on the action every night with highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com/UCSS and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. J and G weren't here yesterday when we spent the first hour of the show talking about day 2 of OTAs, which was open to the media, the quarterback competition. But there was a quote from Joe Flacco that stood out to me, and I'm curious what you guys think of Joe Flacco's quote and how it will impact the impending quarterback battle. And while we talk about the quote, I'm sure we'll get some thoughts from J and G on Shedeur Sanders, Dillon, Gabriel, and what they were able to see on day 2 of OTAs. But Joe Flacco was asked about his familiarity with the offense. Is it a similar playbook to what he ran in 2023 when he had success in December, led the Browns to the playoffs? And this is what Joe Flacco had to say. Quote, "It's a lot of similar concepts and things like that. There may be some new names and some new ways we're teaching things, but ultimately a lot of the core stuff is pretty similar." Kevin Stefanski said they're reverting back to the offense he likes to run, the 2023 version. No spread, fewer RPOs, more under center play action. But, G, do you think Joe Flacco's familiarity with the offensive system, because he played 5 games in a playoff game here with Kevin Stefanski in 2023, gives him a bit of an inside track to eventually winning that QB1 job?
Yeah. I know it's kind of bland, but that's why in the beginning I always thought that Joe Flacco, had the leg up. When you talk about what exactly Joe Flacco does well, it's pretty much all of the other stuff that Kevin Stefanski likes to call and run. When you got, people look at it kind of as in a vacuum a little bit, like this competition, but there's other things on the outside that play into it. Joe Flacco's been around for so long. In the league, they have a lot of times where people might call something a different thing. It might be different verbiage, but it's the same concepts. And you've been around and you've been able to be around somebody that was with Kevin Stefanski, and they say, oh, yeah, we used to do this in Baltimore, 10, 15 years ago, or I was with the Jets and we did this, and the Colts had a little something similar to that. So, Joe has the ability to have all of those concepts in his head and to understand the bigger picture. So when you look at some of the younger guys like Dillon, Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders, you could say something to Joe, and Joe has this really 30,000-foot view of, okay, what does the concept mean? What is the primary receiver? What am I looking at? What are my eyes looking at as far as my landmarks and safeties, and what has the coverage been giving me when I've ran this in other places before? And that's that's almost like having the answers to the test already. Like, a lot of the other guys have to understand or have to get to all those places, and he's already done it. Not to mention, he was already here at one point in time, and he has some success doing it. So when Kevin Stefanski calls that play, he can go back to his memory and he can say, okay, I remember I was doing this against the first game against the Rams, or I remember this happened against Chicago, or, different things like that where he can recall, figure out what he did good or bad in those situations, and it helps him out. And then plus, too, I thought the only way that somebody would really come up and take, Flacco's minutes or unseat him early in the season would be if he came out there and he was throwing the football and his arm wasn't there. But I was watching the show the other day, watched some of the other stuff, and by all intents and purposes, like Jason said, I was watching him, he says, oh, no, Flacco can still throw the ball.
Oh, he can spin it.
So if he still got that, and he already know the playbook, you in an uphill battle. You know what I'm saying? You in an uphill battle. The only thing that I could see that unseats him is if he gets hurt or his arm falls off. So his arm ain't fell off. He know the playbook. So I think he's, like I said before, I think, he starts the season off as the guy who has the best chance to start game 1.
Yeah, I echo all that. I mean, certainly, if the question is, does it give him an edge, the answer to that is absolutely yes. He knows it. He's been in it, even though he was only in it for a third of the season. Joe's the kind of guy that's a sponge. He soaked it all up. He knew it well then. There was never a moment during his 5 regular season starts, correct me if I'm wrong, where I looked at him and he had to call an emergency timeout or he didn't understand a play call or he was just not present with what was supposed to happen. I think that was the thing that shocked me the most because he was on the couch one week and he's under center the next week and he had complete command of the playbook and he just knew where everybody was supposed to be. And that's what a 38 at the time year old pro does. He knows how to study. He knows how to cram it in there and get it all done. And I think that was his biggest skill set coming into this year is the fact that he's knows the offense. But the question was interesting the way it was because the question was, does it give him a leg up in the quarterback competition or should it come down to which of the four guys is the best quarterback? That's the way you had phrased it in the overnight note. And that's where it gets interesting for me anyhow, because the more I hear guys talk, and when I say guys, I mean beat reporters that cover the team every day, it seems to me to be a fait accompli that Joe's not going to win this job. Am I right, Jay? It just seems like that's where the wind is blowing.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
It's complicated because what does playing a 40-year-old Joe Flacco accomplish for you?
And listen, I'm not asking about
Joe Flacco
why
right
they
now.
got
Joe
there.
Flacco right now is best quarterback on this roster.
And you know what? When I was thinking about this topic last night, that's the one point I wanted to stress. And I also wanted to follow it up with this. Yes, he's the best quarterback on the roster. He damn well better be. One guy's played parts of 3-4 seasons. I don't know. Pickett's been in 3 years.
He's a starter for 2 years.
Yeah, he was a starter for 2 years. Didn't start last year in Philly. The other two guys haven't taken a snap. So he better be the best quarterback on this roster, even at 40 years old, because we've seen how he can throw the football. If you didn't look at the number and you just watch the footwork and the arm and the throws and the accuracy and the tightness of his spiral, he is head and shoulders the best quarterback on this team right now.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be. But that got me to the tricky answer to the second part of this question. And I'll read it again. Should it come down to which of the four guys is the best quarterback? Because of what you said and because of the way the wind is blowing with most of the beat reporters, it seems to be this fait accompli that it's not going to be Joe. It's just not, because they don't learn anything. Most teams, when they have a quarterback competition, this was their goal. Well, who gives us the best chance to win? Well, that's easy. Joe Flacco gives the Browns the best chance to win,
Absolutely.
period, full stop, end of story.
Yeah.
At least today.
Yeah.
But with the Browns, that's not necessarily their mission coming into the 2025 season. And I think that blinking billboard is blinking louder and stronger and faster than I've seen it blink. This is, to quote your phrase, the gentleman's punt that's happening in May, last day of May. Is that the right? It might be the right thing to do. But I'll tell you, as an aged fan who only has so many shots left in the chamber to watch this team try to do the unthinkable, when you're 59 and life expectancy is 78,
I hear you.
and you've got 19 bullets to fire,
Yeah.
you don't want to fire one off intermittently
I hear you.
and not even aim at your target. And that's what they're doing, and there's just a loser's mentality. I understand it's for the greater good, but that to me is equal to throwing games in December so you can try to get a better draft pick in May.
If there's 17 games.
April.
If there's 17 games this year and Joe Flacco starts 13 of them, 14 of them.
We got a problem.
What did you learn?
Nothing.
When we get to the end of the season, my hope, looking at these four quarterbacks, you look at Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Shedeur, and Dillon Gabriel. My hope when we're at the end of the season, Shedeur Sanders has the most starts of anybody on this roster.
I would say that would be the best thing for this team.
Because he's the only one that I look at and say, you might have a future with him, you better find out what you have.
Right.
I don't think you have a future with Dillon Gabriel. I don't think you have a future with Kenny Pickett. I don't think you have a future with Joe Flacco. Shedeur is the one guy that you look at and you say, there might be something there.
Yeah.
We got to get a look at that. So if it's anything other than Shedeur, unless he gets hurt, obviously you got to throw injuries out. If there's anyone more who doesn't get more game reps or more game starts than Shedeur, I think that's a mistake. Unless they come to the conclusion it's not him, he's got to go.
But what about so that leads me to what my next question was, because Joe Thomas, when he was on the show after the draft, said very bluntly and matter-of-factly, we'll know real fast which one of these guys can play and which can't.
I remember that.
And so based on that, I'll ask another question. When the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers with a firm number one ahead of him that at the time no one thought was going anywhere in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So you were looking at Aaron Rodgers as the future, but not the immediate future.
Right.
Why wasn't it talked about then with Aaron Rodgers, what the Packers did with that situation that worked to perfection? And by the way they replaced Aaron Rodgers is the same way they replaced Brett Favre.
Yes.
They went out and drafted Jordan Love, who had to sit and watch.
Yes. It's a high-functioning organization that did it the right way.
And because of
But
that,
they
I
took a
ask
lot
you
of heat in the
this.
moment because they didn't supply their quarterback with weapons.
No,
Like
I get
Aaron
that.
Rodgers wanted weapons, and they didn't give him weapons. They gave him Jordan Love. They gave him his replacement.
And listen, he had
And
every
they
right
took
to
a
be
lot
upset.
of heat. And there isn't always a winner and loser. Both sides could be right.
Yeah, you're right. And that's so the reason I bring that up is because we have seen situations with prominent quarterbacks in the last 10 years that have come into the league, and I know with Aaron Rodgers it's longer than that, but I'll use Patrick Mahomes as an example. When Patrick Mahomes was drafted, I think the thought there was he can sit, he can watch. Was it Alex Smith that was ahead of him? Mm-hmm. He can sit, he can watch. And all of a sudden, when it came his turn, and that was whenever the organization decided he is ready for the ball, let's make the transition. I feel like that transition could happen here, and here's what I mean by that. What if Joe is the best coming out of training camp? Do you really want to give the gentleman's punt to your team in week one and throw one of the kids out there when they're not ready because you have nothing to gain by playing a youngster too soon?
Can I throw this? Can I be devil advocate?
Yeah, you can, but let me finish my point here. I think what I would think, I know that you're saying if Shedeur doesn't start the most games, we don't learn anything. What's wrong with if Joe's the best quarterback and he gives us the best chance? This is the same guy who 2 years ago came in off the couch and rallied a 4-1 to punch a playoff ticket. So what's the harm in giving him the first month, maybe longer, to see where this goes? We're thinking 0-6 is a possibility, crew. 0-6 is a possibility with this schedule.
I'm going to let you go.
What if he comes in 3-3 through the gauntlet part of the schedule, and then once you realize if it turns into 6-8, and now you go, okay, and I know it's only 3 games, but now you pull the trigger and say, okay, Shedeur, now it's yours.
That's not enough because you have 2 number 1 picks. That's not enough time for Shedeur. Go ahead, G.
So what if? So there's been a popular theory going around that says maybe Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are not on the hot seat. We talked about it.
Well, I think it's been said by the owner they're not.
Okay.
General managers who are on the hot seat don't trade down to acquire
Okay.
first round
So-
pick for the following
not
year.
willingly.
So let's extrapolate that out. If they say, okay, we got Shedeur Sanders, we got him in the 5th round, we got all these other quarterbacks, and we looking around. And then they go through the season, they go through camp and say, look, man, we feel we got something here. But Joe is a better player. Joe, at this point, is better equipped to handle the starting role, handling the season. And they get off to not what people would expect to be a bad start. What if they get off to a 500 start?
That's why I said 3-3 through 6. I would, if 3-3 through the first 6 would be like scaling Everest.
And if Joe can do that, what if the organization says, look, well, listen, we like Shedeur good enough that we do think he's a future starting quarterback for us? We might let him sit. What if he sits the entire year? What if he don't even see the field? Shedeur Sanders don't see the field. Joe Flacco plays the season out. Your record is what your record is. And could it possibly be that the Cleveland Browns have already can make an evaluation saying, we like him, he fell to us in the 5th round. We're going to let him sit, mature, do whatever we want, get into the system, learn from Joe Flacco, and do exactly what people have been clamoring for forever. Not like me. I'm like, you got to play tomorrow. But what if they saying, all right, we're going to let you sit like Mahomes. We're going to let you sit like Jordan Love. We're going to let you sit like some of these other guys. Aaron Rodgers. And we'll see what you do. And you come in next year, and guess what? Now you have a whole year that you sat and watched. You didn't do anything. And you got to learn from somebody. And the rest of the 2 quarterbacks are under 1-year deals. So now you go into next year with an opportunity with 2 first-round picks that you can do other things with besides quarterback. Is it possible they can make that evaluation on Shedeur Sanders that they like him enough that they don't even have to play him this year, but they'll play him next year?
I think that's possible. Do you, Jay?
No.
You don't.
No.
Why?
No.
If he doesn't play at all this year, they're taking a quarterback in the first round next year.
Really?
Period. Oh yeah.
Done. So
Done.
well then
What
here's
if
what
they
I would
like-
say to
what
that.
if they
Joe.
like
But
They like
Jason
Dorian
out.
Thompson Robinson.
Yeah,
they
but
really like Dorian.
They did, but you know
until
what?
they
Then
threw
you
him in
have
the
your
game
answer.
and they said,
See,
"Oh my God."
I think then you have your answer. You see him every day in practice. You see him every day. And I understand that live bullets are a totally different thing. But to say that absolutely if he doesn't hit the field, then you have to go quarterback next year, then you've already made the assessment that this isn't your guy. If he's your guy, he'll beat Joe Flacco.
They made the decision when they traded down, they're taking a quarterback next year. When they traded Dillon Gabriel, they made the decision they're not taking Shedeur Sanders. They're leaving him for somebody else. They never thought when they took Dillon Gabriel in the third round, Shedeur Sanders was still going to be there in the fifth round.
No, I know they didn't. That was an emergency move.
So they were very comfortable with not having him in Cleveland.
Right.
And then they got to the point where it's like, well,
we might as well.
We might as well take a shot. Look, he's still here. It's a value pick at this point. Let's take a shot. But if they don't play him all season long, they're telling you what they think about
now,
him.
the odds of that happening, though, by the way,
nil.
What
Zero.
team has one quarterback start all 17?
But here's
and
the-
nobody's doing that at 40.
But I'll say this: you don't really have a choice. Like if Joe Flacco is out here and they get off to a start where they're competitive and they're in the hunt,
yeah, you're not going to bench him
You're not
then.
taking him out
You're
the
not.
game. You're
No.
not. First of all, the fans won't let you.
No.
Second of all, the veterans on the team will not let that happen. They will be up in arms because they're going to say, listen, guys, you punted on the season. Joe is playing well. These other guys are rookies. I'm just saying it like this. We've been talking about it forever. We've been saying that the Cleveland Browns have an opportunity. Hey, why don't you do it like some of these other people do, right? I get that Shedeur is a fifth-round pick, but there's a chance that the Browns see something in him for the future and say, well, look, we're not content. We're content with letting him grow and develop like we said we was going to do, and we're still got veterans in here that can help us try to win some football games.
Sure.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, especially if if your theory is correct that they're not in any sort of danger of losing their jobs tomorrow. I definitely think that might be a situation.
I will say this about the hot seat. Someone once told me about, we were doing this debate once, and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been over Mike Shanahan, but I can't remember. We were doing this debate on whether or not the seat was hot. And one of our analysts said this, and it was so prophetic, and I keep hearing it. What NFL seat isn't hot? Yeah. Every seat in the NFL is hot. I mean, save Bill Belichick when he was in New England, and Andy Reid now in, I mean, remember, Sirianni was a hot young star rising through the ranks, had an awful season 2 years ago. There were people in Philly that wanted him fired, unceremoniously let go. The guy wins the Super Bowl the next year. So your fate and fortune in the NFL hinges on the next game. I know it's really not that week to week, but let's face it, for an administration, and I'm talking about Stefanski and Barry, that have had the checkered past that they've had, and I don't mean checkered with controversy, I just mean good year, bad year, good year, bad year. When you're not consistently good, your seat's warm, and it's a few weeks from being hot. So I know that the owner can say all he wants, they've got my vote of confidence. What is that typically meant historically?
Well,
when the owner says that,
I've said this multiple times, but it bears repeating one more. I talked to someone who worked there, who got a glowing review at his annual review, a glowing review from the Haslams, fired 2 weeks later.
Yeah, there you go.
So you're trusting a highly emotional owner to not make an emotional decision in October and November.
When his history has been...
So, yeah, there's risk in that, for sure.
Yeah.
But one other thing, you said if Flacco's playing well, they can't bench him. I show you Johnny Manziel and Brian Hoyer. The Browns were in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
They were in the playoff hunt, and they benched Hoyer for Manziel.
Now, is there difference, though, the gravitas that Hoyer brought compared to the gravitas that
doesn't matter.
Joe Flacco brings?
It's a veteran. It was a veteran who had the team in the playoff hunt, and they benched him.
Yeah, but
for
Jay,
a guy who never started the
I'll
playoffs.
just say
But
this.
we saw Flacco go to a playoff game. That'd be
He's done it. And
I don't care.
at the risk of being hyperbolic, which I love to do, let's just say instead of 3-3 through that gauntlet first 6 weeks, if you go 4-2,
oh man,
Joe's not sitting down until they're 2 or 3 games under 500, and you're waving goodbye to the season.
Do you know how many T-shirts I'm gonna print? It'd be 4-2.
That's
I got
it.
a whole.
Jay,
Look at that schedule.
What's the percentage chance pull that back up, Steve, that you think the Browns can go 4-2 to start the season?
The same chance I would have given him coming off the couch and taking the Browns to the playoffs. What that is, I don't know. Single digits.
I will eat the oatmeal over a sugar cookie before the Browns go 4-2.
I know that. Listen, I get it. I said at the risk of sounding hyperbolic, they're not going 4-2.
No.
Okay, and that would be a lovely problem for the Browns management to have.
Yeah.
But it's something that Browns fan base would welcome with open arms. We want 4-2. Yes, we want our future quarterback, but we don't want another gentleman's punt on a season. I don't. I'm running out of years, man. I want a championship.
Last year was rough.
Yeah?
It was rough.
I don't need one of those
It was
anymore.
rough.